My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 31 years old. And at my own birthday party in a café, my mom leaned toward my brother and whispered, "While everyone's here, go change the lock on her apartment." He nodded, quietly stood up, and left without saying a word. An hour later, he came back paler than the tablecloth and whispered, "Mom, there." What he said next silenced the whole café. If you're watching this, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? It was supposed to be simple, a quiet cafe, a few candles, and maybe, for once, peace. I'd booked the table myself, even paid for the cake, because I just wanted to feel normal. My mother, my brother Adam, his wife, and a few cousins, all sitting around pretending this family wasn't broken in half. But that whisper, it changed everything. You have to understand something about my mother. She doesn't whisper. She commands. She announces. She controls every conversation, every moment, every breath in the room. So when I heard her lean into Adam's ear and speak so quietly that even I, sitting right across from them, could barely make out the words, I knew something was wrong. Terribly, devastatingly wrong. The cafe was one of those cozy places with exposed brick walls and fairy lights strung across the ceiling. I'd chosen it because it felt safe, neutral, somewhere she couldn't make a scene, somewhere I could finally have a birthday that didn't end in tears, or screaming matches, or her storming out because I wasn't grateful enough for whatever manipulation she was calling love that week. But when Adam stood up, grabbed his car keys from the table, and walked out without even looking at me, without saying happy birthday or excuse me or anything at all, the entire table went quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring and your chest tight. I thought I misheard her. But when Adam stood, grabbed his car keys and left, the entire table went quiet. I asked, "Where's he going?" Mom just smiled faintly, that cold, managerial smile she uses when she's hiding something. "Just a small errand," she said. I tried to focus on my cake, but something about her tone felt like a warning. The chocolate cake sat in front of me, 31 candles melted down to little pools of wax, and I couldn't take a single bite. My stomach was twisted in knots. Dad cleared his throat and tried to make conversation about the weather, about work, about anything except the obvious question hanging in the air. Why did Adam just leave my birthday party to run an errand for our mother? My cousin Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Adam's wife Lisa kept checking her phone, probably texting him to ask what was going on. But Mom just sat there, that smile frozen on her face, checking her watch every few minutes like she was timing something. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to sound normal. "What errand? What's so important that Adam had to leave right now?" She dabbed at her lips with her napkin, taking her time, making me wait, making me beg for information like I'd been doing my entire life. "It's nothing you need to worry about, Clara. Just trust me." Trust her. The woman who'd spent decades undermining every decision I made, every relationship I tried to build, every attempt at independence. Trust her. 45 minutes later, he still hadn't returned. My mother checked her phone every minute. Dad tried to make small talk, but the air was stiff. Then Adam came back, pale, trembling, eyes wide like he'd seen a ghost. When Adam finally walked back through the cafe door, I barely recognized him. My brother, who'd always been Mom's golden child, her obedient soldier, looked like he'd aged 10 years in the span of an hour. His hands were shaking as he sat down, and he couldn't meet my eyes. Mom straightened in her chair, suddenly alert, suddenly focused. "Well, did you do it?" His lips barely moved. "Mom, there's police tape around her door." Forks froze midair. The cafe went silent. I felt my stomach drop. Police tape? My apartment? The world tilted sideways. Police tape. Around my door. My apartment. The place I'd fought so hard to afford. The first space that was truly mine. The sanctuary I'd built brick by brick after years of living under her roof. Under her rules. Under her suffocating control. "What do you mean, police tape?" I whispered, but my voice came out strangled. barely audible over the sudden roaring in my ears. Adam's face was white as paper. Clara, I was just supposed to change the locks like Mom asked, but when I got there were police cars everywhere. The whole hallway was blocked off. They wouldn't let me near your door. The room started spinning. Other cafe patrons were staring now, drawn by the tension at our table, by the way my family had suddenly become a crime scene of whispered confessions and wide-eyed shock. Police cars? I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. What are you talking about? Why were there police cars? Mom's expression didn't change. That same cold smile, like she was watching a movie she'd already seen, like she knew how this would end. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from tonight? Within minutes, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ms. Hayes, this is Officer Carter from the City PD. We need you to come home immediately. My brother looked terrified. Mom just whispered, "Don't overreact." But when I reached my apartment, the flashing lights made it impossible not to. The drive to my apartment was a blur of red lights and racing thoughts. Officer Carter had been vague on the phone, professional but urgent. There's been an incident at your residence, Ms. Hayes. We need you here as soon as possible to verify some information. An incident. At my residence. The words kept echoing in my mind as I drove through the familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign and threatening. When I pulled up to my building, it looked like something out of a nightmare. 3 police cars lined the curb, their red and blue lights painting the brick facade in harsh, alternating colors. Yellow tape stretched across the entrance to my hallway, and uniformed officers stood guard like sentries. The door was cracked open. My name on the police report. The word break-in underlined twice. Officer Carter was a tall man with kind eyes and a tired expression. He approached me as I got out of my car, my legs shaky and unreliable beneath me. Ms. Hayes? I'm Officer Carter. Thank you for coming so quickly. What happened? I asked, though part of me was terrified to hear the answer. There was a break-in reported at your apartment approximately 2 hours ago. A neighbor called it in when they heard unusual noises and saw someone tampering with your door. 2 hours ago? Right around the time Adam had left my birthday party. But here's the thing, Officer Carter continued, studying my face carefully. When we arrived, we found the door had been opened with a key. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows. Whoever did this had legitimate access. My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't understand. Ms. Hayes, do you know anyone who might have access to your keys? My mouth went dry. My brother, but my mother told him to change the locks tonight. The officer paused, frowning. Change them? Why? I don't know, I whispered. The weight of the situation was starting to crush me. My own family. My own brother. Following orders from my mother to break into my apartment while I sat unsuspecting at my birthday dinner, trusting them, believing we were finally having a normal family moment. A few moments later, his radio crackled. We found something inside. You should see this. In my living room, an envelope. On it, my mother's handwriting. Inside, a single printed message. Tell her the truth before someone else does. Standing in my violated living room, holding that envelope with my mother's familiar handwriting, I felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had been broken and repaired so many times over the years that it was more scar tissue than organ at this point. This was something deeper. This was the last thread of hope I'd been clinging to, the pathetic belief that maybe, somehow, my mother actually loved me. The message was printed on plain white paper, but the words burned into my retinas like acid. Tell her the truth before someone else does. What truth? What had she been hiding that was so terrible she'd orchestrate this elaborate invasion of my privacy, this violation of my space, this destruction of my trust? Officer Carter watched me read the note, his expression growing more concerned. Ms. Hayes, is there something you need to tell me? Any family disputes? Financial disagreements? Anything that might explain why your mother would want your brother to have access to your apartment? I shook my head, But even as I did, pieces started falling into place. The way Mom had been asking about my mail lately, her insistence on helping with my taxes last year, the way she'd offered to co-sign my lease, even though I'd specifically told her I wanted to do it on my own. "I need to talk to her," I said, my voice hollow and strange to my own ears. "Before you do that," Officer Carter said gently, "we should document everything here. Take pictures, make a report. Whatever's going on between you and your family, you want everything officially recorded." He was right, of course. But all I could think about was getting answers. All I could think about was confronting the woman who'd just shattered the last piece of trust between us. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? I drove back home shaking. I didn't know if I was angry, scared, or both. But I knew one thing. I couldn't let her control the story this time. The drive back to my parents' house felt like traveling through a war zone. Every familiar landmark, the grocery store where Mom used to take me shopping, the park where she'd pushed me on swings, the school where she'd volunteered at every bake sale, felt contaminated now, poisoned by this new reality. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely grip the steering wheel. 31 years of manipulation, 31 years of gaslighting, 31 years of being told I was overreacting, being too sensitive, imagining things that weren't there. And now I had proof. Cold, hard, police-documented proof that my instincts had been right all along. I called her. "Dinner, tomorrow, my place, no excuses." Her voice didn't even waver. "Fine," she said, "but be ready to hear things you won't like." That calm, collected response chilled me to the bone. No surprise, no denial. No attempt to explain or apologize or even ask what had happened. Just that cold acceptance, like she'd been expecting this call, like she'd been preparing for this confrontation for years. "What things, Mom?" I asked, but she'd already hung up. That night, I barely slept. I lay in my childhood bedroom because I couldn't bear to go back to my apartment, couldn't bear to see the evidence of their betrayal again so soon, staring at the ceiling and trying to piece together a lifetime of lies. Every Christmas gift that had come with strings attached, every birthday where the focus had somehow shifted back to her, every achievement I'd earned that she'd found a way to diminish or claim credit for, every relationship I'd tried to build that she'd slowly, systematically undermined. The truth was, I'd been expecting this moment my entire life. Some part of me had always known that the love she claimed to feel was conditional, transactional, designed to serve her needs rather than nurture mine. But I'd kept hoping, kept trying, kept believing that if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, proved myself worthy enough, she'd finally see me as a person instead of a possession. When she arrived, she didn't hug me. She just looked around my damaged apartment like it was beneath her. "You shouldn't have called the police," she said. The next evening, when Mom walked into my apartment, she carried herself like she owned the place, like she had every right to be there, like the yellow tape that had been removed just hours earlier was a minor inconvenience rather than evidence of her orchestrated violation of my privacy. She wore her best coat, her pearl earrings, her perfectly applied lipstick. She looked like she was going to a business meeting, not a confrontation with the daughter she'd betrayed. I folded my arms. "You shouldn't have sent my brother to break in." Her face hardened. "You found it, didn't you?" "Found what?" "Your father's files. The ones that were never supposed to exist." The room felt smaller. The truth cracked open like thunder. Files. What files? I felt like I was drowning in questions, gasping for air in an ocean of revelations I wasn't prepared for. "What files?" I demanded, but even as I asked, I remembered. Last month, when I'd been looking for my birth certificate to renew my passport, I'd found a folder tucked behind some old photo albums, financial documents with my name on them, bank statements I'd never seen, investment accounts I'd never opened. At the time, I'd assumed it was just typical parental overreach. Maybe they'd set up some kind of college fund years ago and forgotten to tell me. I'd been too busy with work, too stressed about other things to investigate further. But looking at Mom's face now, I realized those documents were something much more sinister. She'd been hiding assets, debts, even using my name on paperwork for years. And when I found them, She panicked. The words spilled out of her like poison finally being drawn from a wound. Years of financial manipulation. Credit cards opened in my name. Investment accounts where she was the primary beneficiary, but I was listed as the owner. Tax documents filed under my social security number for income I'd never earned. "You had no right," she said, her voice rising to that familiar pitch that had terrified me as a child. "Those were private family matters. You had no right to go through our personal papers." "Our papers?" I laughed, but it came out harsh and bitter. "These papers have my name on them, my social security number, my credit. You've been using my identity for years." "I was protecting you," she snapped. "Your father made some poor investments. We needed options. We needed flexibility. You were young, you had good credit, you didn't need to know about every little financial detail." Every little financial detail. Like identity theft was just a minor bookkeeping error. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "No, Mom," I said quietly. "I just stopped pretending." The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in my life, I'd spoken the truth to her face without apologizing, without softening it, without cushioning her feelings at the expense of my own reality. She stood there, her perfect composure finally cracking, and I could see the real her underneath. Not the martyred mother who sacrificed everything for her ungrateful daughter. Not the victim of my unreasonable expectations and emotional demands. Just a woman who'd built her entire sense of self on controlling and exploiting the people who loved her. "You have no idea what you've done," she said, her voice low and threatening. "No idea what this will cost us." "What it will cost you," I corrected. "This is your mess, not mine. These are your choices, not mine. And I'm done being your scapegoat." Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? The next day, I met Officer Carter again, this time with evidence. Emails, documents, proof that my parents had used my name to hide money. Walking into the police station with that folder of documents felt like carrying my entire childhood in my arms. Every paper was evidence of another betrayal, another lie, another moment when my mother had chosen her own convenience over my well-being. Officer Carter listened patiently as I explained what I'd discovered. The false accounts, the forged signatures, the years of financial fraud committed in my name. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, and never once made me feel like I was overreacting or being dramatic. "Ms. Hayes," he said when I finished, "this is serious. Identity theft, even between family members, is a federal crime. The amount of money involved here, we're talking about significant charges, against my own parents, the people who'd raised me, fed me, claimed to love me." But as I sat in that sterile police station, signing official statements and providing evidence, I realized something profound. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself, not them. Not their version of love that required my silence and compliance. Not their version of family that demanded I sacrifice my own well-being for their comfort. He nodded slowly. "You've done the right thing, Ms. Hayes. We'll take it from here." For the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy, but free. Free. Such a simple word, but it felt revolutionary. Free from the constant anxiety of trying to predict her moods. Free from the guilt of never being grateful enough, never loving enough, never giving enough. Free from the exhausting work of pretending our relationship was normal, healthy, salvageable. The investigation moved quickly after that. Financial records don't lie, and my parents had been sloppy, confident that I'd never challenge them, never question their authority, never value my own well-being enough to fight back. Within weeks, the evidence was undeniable. Bank fraud, identity theft, tax evasion, a laundry list of crimes that painted a picture of systematic exploitation spanning nearly a decade. Adam called me once during those weeks, his voice broken and apologetic. "Clara, I'm so sorry. I had no idea how deep this went. I thought I was just changing your locks." I believed him. Adam had always been Mom's favorite, but he'd also always been her victim. She'd trained him from childhood to follow orders without question, to prioritize her needs over his own judgment. In some ways, His betrayal hurt worse because I knew he genuinely thought he was helping, genuinely believed whatever story she'd told him about why this was necessary. I know, I told him, but you're going to have to choose now. Her version of the truth, or the actual truth. He was quiet for a long time. Then, finally, I choose you. A month later, my parents' investigation went public. I didn't watch the news. I didn't need to. The local news coverage was brief but thorough. Financial fraud investigation leads to charges against local couple. No mention of my name. I'd requested anonymity as the victim, but anyone who knew our family would understand what had happened. My phone rang constantly for days. Relatives wanting to know if the news reports were true. Family friends expressing shock and disbelief. Neighbors who'd always seen my parents as pillars of the community, struggling to reconcile this new reality with their previous perceptions. I didn't answer most of the calls. I'd spent enough years explaining myself, defending my perspective, trying to convince people that my reality was valid. I was done being the family spokesperson, done managing other people's comfort with uncomfortable truths. The only calls I took were from Adam, who was working with investigators and slowly coming to terms with how thoroughly he'd been manipulated, and from my cousin Sarah, who'd suspected something was wrong for years, but hadn't known how to approach me about it. I wish I'd said something sooner, Sarah told me during one of our long conversations. I could see how she treated you. We all could. But we kept telling ourselves it wasn't our business, that families work things out privately. You couldn't have changed anything, I assured her. I had to be ready to see it myself. That night, I sat in the same café where it all began, drinking coffee alone, not lonely, just peaceful. Returning to that café felt like completing a circle. The same exposed brick walls, the same fairy lights, the same cozy atmosphere that had witnessed the beginning of my liberation. But everything was different now. I ordered a slice of chocolate cake. Not because it was my birthday, not because anyone expected me to celebrate or perform happiness, but simply because I wanted it. Such a small thing, but it represented something enormous. The freedom to make choices based on my own desires, rather than someone else's expectations. The cafe was quieter this time, filled with couples on dates and friends catching up over coffee. Normal people living normal lives, free from the particular kind of toxicity that had defined my family for so many years. I thought about that birthday, that whisper, and realized something. Some locks don't need changing, some doors need closing. The metaphor felt perfect as I sat there, savoring my coffee and watching the evening light fade outside. Mom had sent Adam to change the locks on my apartment, thinking she could control my access to my own life, my own truth, my own choices. But the locks that really needed changing weren't on my door. They were on my heart, on my mind, on my willingness to accept love that came with conditions and strings and demands for silence. I'd changed those locks myself. And I was the only one with the key. And I finally had the key. The key to my own life. The key to my own story. The key to relationships built on mutual respect rather than manipulation and control. The key to a future where my worth wasn't determined by someone else's approval or disapproval. It wasn't a happy ending. Not in the traditional sense. My parents would face legal consequences for their actions. My family would never be the same. There would be no tearful reconciliation, no moment of understanding where Mom finally acknowledged the pain she'd caused, and we all hugged and moved forward together. But it was a true ending, an honest ending, an ending where justice was served and victims were protected, and the cycle of abuse was finally, definitively broken. As I finished my coffee and prepared to leave, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine peace. Not the fragile, temporary peace of avoiding conflict or managing someone else's emotions, but the deep, lasting peace that comes from living authentically, from choosing truth over comfort, from valuing your own well-being enough to fight for it. If you felt this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Your support means everything. Walking out of that cafe into the cool evening air, I realized that my real birthday hadn't been that terrible day when everything fell apart. My real birthday was today, this moment, When I finally stopped pretending to be someone else's version of who I should be and started living as myself. 31 years old and finally, truly, completely free.